advanced science training, where she was attached to a laboratory in Montempla in France. And on returning, she also attended a mentoring workshop in Nairobi and also a women leadership and management course at Accra. These trainings were organized by AWARD, and that is the African Women in Agricultural Research and Development. She also attends several other trainings.
The chairman, sir, the registered Nigerian Institute of Soil Science, all invited participants to this year's soil expertise dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, good day. This year's theme is indeed an interesting one, because it brings our mind back to the community soil and its residents, the biodiversity. As far back as 1938, Charles Kellogg acknowledged that all life depends on soil. There can be no life without soil, and no soil without life. They've all evolved together. And then in 2020, 82 years later, soil scientists is bringing our mind again back to the community soil and the life in it. The science of soil. What we know as soil is 45% minerals, 25% water, 25% air, and 5% organic matter. Within the soil are plant roots, bacteria, fungi, algae, worms, insects, and larger animals. When these listed residents are in the soil in the right population, the soil becomes healthy. And a healthy soil has an amazing water holding capacity. With an increase of 1% in organic matter, we're expecting to have as high as 25,000 gallons of water, available water, in an acre of soil. In a teaspoon of soil, you have billions of living organisms. And then also, within an acre of land, you are expected to have as much as weight of living organisms, small living organisms, those that we cannot see with our naked eye, as big as the weight will be compared to 2 big cows. The living soil and its permanent residents. Soil is a community, and we could liken it to Abuja as a community. In Abuja community, we have people as residents. Of course, we are part of it. Made up of people working in having different functions. Some are medical doctors, some are teachers, some are engineers, some are into administrative work. When someone is sick in Abuja community, the person gets to the doctor. Students meet the teachers. Engineers do engineering work. That is the same way the soil community operates. Within the soil community are organisms of various sizes, some of which we cannot see with our eyes. Others we can see when we concentrate. But while others, the bigger ones, are very obvious that we see them moving all the time. And also within the soil community, we can see the roots of a living plant. That is even a community of its own with within the soil community, because a lot of activities of these organisms are going on around the roots of plants. Soil function as powered by soil biodiversity. These are the soil functions. The basic one, or the primary one, is the provision of food, fiber, and fuel. We've all known soil as where our food comes from. But before this food can be produced, there are a lot of activities that would have taken place within the soil system. The next one is the carbon sequestration. That is the capturing of carbon from the atmosphere. Capturing and storing of carbon in the soil. When carbon is captured, it helps to regulate the climate because it traps down the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and makes the environment cooler for us to thrive in the environment. Another function is water purification and soil contaminant reduction. These functions being mentioned, of course, cannot be achieved without the work of soil biodiversity. That's why I said the power. We may not see them, but whatever we are seeing that is happening, positive things happening in our soil, is happening because of these organisms that are silent occupants of the soil. So, like I said, the water purification and soil contamination function is carried out by these organisms. As the rain comes, water percolates through the soil particles, and they help the organisms in the soil, helps in trapping the contaminants in the soil, in the water. And then, by the time the water gets to the water body, the groundwater, it becomes pure. That is why in the depths of soil, we have pure water. It's the work of the soil organism, the biodiversity. Also, a lot of things are being dumped in our soil. It is these organisms that help to decontaminate those toxins, making them less harmful for our existence. The soil, of course, is a habitat for all these organisms. That's where they live and thrive, and as they are living their life, getting protection, they are providing nutrients for the plants. As they are living in the soil, they are helping in nutrient cycling, like I've mentioned. Flood regulation. This is another function carried out by the soil biodiversity. As the water comes down into the soil, because of the roots of the plants and the ecological engineers, the soil is able to percolate through the soil down into the water bodies. When these organisms are not there to do their work, when they are depleted, their work cannot be achieved. And this is what causes flooding. Because the soil environment becomes compacted to an extent, and the water cannot percolate well. But the water must find its way, so it moves to other places where it will cause havoc. The plant materials are being harvested and processed, and they are brought back to us in form of the chemicals, the capsules we take. Also, genetic resources. Some organisms, for instance, the fungi, in which the age and all the activities that happen in the soil could be detected from. But basically, most of these functions cannot be made possible without the biodiversity. And as a matter of fact, for any reason, any of these organisms in the soil, the biodiversity is depleted, something drastic will happen. For instance, just like in the university system, academic activities have been brought to a halt for months because a group of the university system is on strike. Despite the fact the university is not closed down, students for their studies, because a group that is responsible for the academics are at home. That is how it is in the soil system. As long as at any moment any of these biodiversity is disrupted, something drastic happens. But unfortunately, because they are not human and they don't speak, we may not observe it. It may take a long time before we could start feeling the effect of this depletion of organisms. For instance, the heat we are experiencing, loss of biodiversity, loss of organic matter, all these things are due to the disruption of these organisms in the soil. There is crisis in the soil. This crisis is caused by climate variability, man-made activities, illegal mining, construction, improper waste disposal, and of course, unwise agricultural management. And as a consequence, we experience soil biodiversity losses, organic matter losses, organic carbon losses, soil erosion, soil compaction and sealing, pollution, acidification, and deforestation. Because of the crisis in the environment, world nations have met and have come out with 17 goals called Sustainable Development Goals. Out of these 17 goals, as you can see from the chart, the soil function powered by soil biodiversity is at the middle. And then you can see there's a chain. The listed 6 goals are in chain. That tells us the link they have even within themselves. And of course, they cannot exist on their own without the soil functions powered by the soil biodiversity. The first goal is no poverty. It's expected that by the year 2030, there will be no poverty in our nation. How do we achieve this? When over 70% of our livelihood, particularly in the rural environment, is dependent on the soil, rural farmers depend on the soil for their livelihood. That is the degraded soil. SDG 2 is talking about food production. That's the food security. It's expected that there will be no hunger by the year 2030. None will go to bed hungry. SDG 3 is talking about good health and well-being. Nations' quality of life is directly linked to soil quality. We've talked about these 3 because they are highly linked. The soil produces what we eat and is a source of livelihood. And the soil is degraded, is worn out. We're talking about well-being, good health and well-being. The soil produces over 90% of the food we consume. And human health is directly linked to the food he consumes. From the water and nutrients, it also helps in fighting diseases and pests. So these are just part of the interaction between the plants and some biodiversity, soil biodiversity. What then shall we do to keep soil alive and protect biodiversity? To the government, we need a national soil policy. This will be a guide on how soils can be managed sustainably. Soil federalism. So the state and the local governments should be at the forefront in promoting sustainable soil management. There's also a need for the government to establish rural agricultural radio stations in all the 774 local governments in Nigeria. This will help to communicate sustainable soil management practices to farmers in their local languages so that they will have better understanding of how they should manage the soil. We also implore the government to employ soil science graduates as subject matter specialists. They are the main vehicle of change. Just as we saw in the drama. But their aim should be to feed the soil so as to feed the plants. And not what they have been feeding the plant directly. Plants is that they wait to see problems, to observe problems. Then they come with curative methods. When the soil, it seems to them the soil does not have, there's really no difference between 70 and 100 as A in computation of results. That is how it could be likened to the field. Presence of pests is not a problem until it has gone beyond the expected load the field could carry. And there is this system in the field that the plant biodiversity are able to do because they send signals to the environment for the organisms to know that there is a threat on them. And when that is done, some of the organisms that act as predators are released to attack the pests. So when the level is not too much, it's still within a acceptable range, they can control and take care of themselves. Unlike, there will be no need for introduction of pesticides, and that the soil doctor will tell them better. To the soil scientists, we need a continual advocacy on healthy soil management. To the media, a continuous sensitization of the masses on the importance and strategies of keeping soil alive and healthy through the radio, the television, newspapers and magazines, soil journalism. In the field of journalism, soil should be made an area of specialization, just like it is in science or business, so that it will be a room for proper amplification of sustainable soil management and for soil correspondence. Thank you.
For exposing and then expanding the theme. Keep soil alive. Please, can we be seated? Is a scholar. He is a scientist and a researcher with the Nigeria Institute of Soil Science, NISS. He holds an MSc, a Master of Science in Soil Science, with research interests in soil physics and hydrology. He also holds a micro PhD, which obtained after a short course on climate change from the University of Ghana in Legon. He has over 50 Mikey.
With due regard to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, the Vice Chairman, NISS Council, Registrar CEO, everybody here present, all protocol duly observed. My name is Mwanda Diara. I'm presenting on approaches for mitigating factors militating against soil health and biodiversity, a theoretical concept for soil sustained policy. I work in collaboration with Bonus in World Agroforestry Center and HODA in Oregon State University, the United States. With the increasing frequency in the menace of environmental pollution and contamination, constant climatic change alongside other anthropogenic factors, soil health and biodiversity has been threatened. Meanwhile, a large proportion of the biodiversity within a terrestrial ecosystem is hidden below ground in soils, and its functionality determines the well-being of our environment. Several cases of human-animal ill health, low agricultural production, including environmental degradation, has been reported globally as a direct or indirect consequences of soil health and biodiversity loss. Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, 2016. Where are we heading to with all these threats? There have been 60% fall in global diversity of birds, mammal, including soil biota, Worldwide Fund for Nature 2018. 20% of the Amazon forest has disappeared in the last 50 years. International Governmental Panel on Climate Change reported that. Worldwide Fund for Nature 2018 reported that. And I also work in a research team that also investigated that. 90% of the world's seabed have been contaminated with plastic waste alongside other contaminants. That is a far cry for sustainable development. Worldwide Fund for Nature 2018. 170, the number of times global temperature has risen. IPCC 2016. Our planet is under threat. And this threat, the map here shows the risk index that was mapped by Worldwide Fund for Nature in 2018. The threat is all over the world. It's a global problem. But Africa is not an exception. You can see Africa there. Nigeria is inclusive. And we need to do something about that. We looked into factors that can be assessed so that we know the current rate of soil biodiversity depletion in the country. And one of the major things we find while waiting for the PowerPoints to come up so that we can see the pictorial form of it, we discovered that the country has been heavily depleted of its microbial life due to contamination with chemical spills, military operations, contamination from industrial outlets, and also climate change. There is a train going on. I don't know when the PowerPoint come up. I will need to go back. There's a map here that shows the major threats to soil biodiversity. Erosion is a major threat to soil biodiversity globally. I think last year World Soil Day was also centered about erosion. The impact of erosion in some areas cannot be reversed. If you have mass, it just be like that. There are things you do, the soil stop being living. It become a dead soil. And the sunlight is a major source of the energy to the plant. And the plant will produce energy, and the humans eat from that energy. But in the soil system also, when the plant leaves die, it decomposes into the soil and produces carbon. The microbial or the microbes in the soil will get that carbon and produce energy and be sustainable. All other feeders can feed from there. That is the cycle. The soil aggregates. If you pick up a soil aggregates, it's not just something that you see and you conclude, oh, this is just soil. It contains sand, silt, clay, roots of plants, microorganisms or macroorganisms, and their secretion. This forms the soil aggregate you pick on. So anytime you pick on the aggregates, you know that is a living system. So those are the various macroorganisms that you can find in the soil. This map here, I was talking about it before the PowerPoint went off. Erosion was mapped to be on the increase and a major threat to solve biodiversity development across the world. And Africa was totally covered. You can see it from the map one day. And this other side, we look at the one on the yellow, organic carbon change. If there's change in the organic carbon in the soil, there's then to be a depreciation in the diversity of microorganisms that exist in that soil. And this other map here, you can see the major traits there. Okay, let's talk about Africa. Loss of soil biodiversity is a trait there. You also see here loss of soil biodiversity is also there. But if you look at the Europe, organic carbon change. So these are major traits that affect our biological system in the soil. Global traits to soil health and biodiversity. The map there was done by Origasi et al. 2016. So we modified that map from him. Africa is our major concern there. You see, Africa is almost covered, totally covered, and Nigeria in that map is greatly affected. So something needs to be done. There are traits that have been reported globally to be on the increase in soil biodiversity depreciation, and these traits, the representative from Indorama talks something about Asia problem. Asia there is greatly affected with deforestation. Deforestation is the major cause of the depreciation or the downward trend in biodiversity development in Asia. Then let's look at Africa. Look at Africa. Africa is mostly affected with climate change. So the problem of Africa is that we need to tackle our climatic system. We need to get adapted to what is happening. We need to look for sustainable approach so that we can continue to exist in centuries to come. This map here, we got data from the work of Gora et al. 2020 and did that visualization. Honda and Bones and me, we did that over the internet. So now you look at that, carbon is a major problem. That is to say that if the carbon content goes down, the soil microorganism goes down. Sorry, not macro and for macrofauna and the rest. So now you look at the clay content. Clay content is also an important aspect of soil fertility. So if the clay content of the soil goes down, there is a depreciation that will happen in the content of the biologicals in the soil. Then aridity, permit me to use this English, is the senior brother of drought. So in the absence of water for a very long time, what do you think would happen to that soil? That soil may become a dead soil because these microbes live the way you live. And if you look at temperature, the rise in temperature, which is one of the major driving forces in climatic change, is also a problem that affects the microbial well-being. Land change, soil types, and the rest was also investigated. But the overall explanation or the conclusion that comes from that angle is that when once these factors, these environmental or climatic or geographical factors is influenced, is going down, is depreciated, the soil microbes will also be depreciated. This pie chart here represents the human traits, what human has done that is causing the soil microbes to go down. What has human done? Human has been able to cause 1% increase in depreciation of soil microbial through its military activities on the land. But now let's look at the major traits. The major trait is industrial production and commercial services. If you look at a paint industry, for an example, after producing your paint and you're having your money and you send your effluents downstream and you destroy the ecosystem, what joy does that bring? Now, you look at the oil sector has 17%, while municipal waste treatment and disposal are 15%. So what do we tackle most? We are going to look at the factors that causes that industrial problem. Modeling, a study was done in University of Abuja. I was fortunate to be a part of study done by Chudi et al. 2020. So we look at the soil biodiversity in connection with soil compaction. Soil compaction was found to have a detrimental effect on the biodiversity flourishing in the soil. So we look at, among all the site sample, it was only about 2 sites, site 15 and site 11 that has microorganism, and we use earthworm for that study. So it's a far cry. If such land wants to use for agricultural production, what do you expect to get from such soil? Interpolation was done so that we can find the trend that could happen in that area. Honda did that. So in collaboration, we looked at the trend, and we found out that the area in red is area that with the increase in the current climatic change, in the current depreciation in the environment, soil organisms in that red area will always depreciate. While the area in blue is area that was modeled to found that with time, the soil micro and macro in that area will increase. This modeling was done even deep into the soil under use remote sensing from the United States lab, and she got that map there down. We got data from Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, and the data was transferred to SDG platform, and this map was developed. This map shows the current trend of soil biodiversity depreciation in Nigeria. You can see Lagos is affected, Port Harcourt is affected, Abuja is affected, all parts of Nigeria is affected. If you look at that, if you look at the legend here, if you look at the legend here, from here is affected, all of them is affected. But the difference there is that even if all of them are affected, there is a variation in this effect, and this variation is that the places with red is a hotspot that needs to be remedied so that we can continue to have enough food to eat. Projection was done at 20% probability level, that's plus greater than or less than 20% probability level. So we found that if with the current increase in climatic condition, with the current increase in evaporation, with the current increase in land degradation, land changes, and all sort of problems facing the African continent, this is going to happen. And if this happens, we now projected it at 50%, and we found this. If that should happen, it means that we will be importing everything that we eat from the nearby country or elsewhere. We look into policy guidelines that can be implemented so that we can bring back our soil biota, so that we can bring back our soil organism, so that we can bring back the living part of the soil. Adapt soil monitoring system which will provide information on undesirable terrain in soil biodiversity loss, and given sufficient time this may be reversed through soil conservation. The drama here talked about soil conservation, Dr. Udo talked about conservation, soil protection measures, and sustainable land management. There are things that we do on the land, not this and that alone. Everybody needs to work. What can everybody do? Stop environmental pollution by proper waste disposal, reuse and recycle. Do not go and dump what you know is toxic in the waterways or anywhere else. If you cannot dispose it yourself, call the experts to do that for you. Application of fertilizer and other soil amendment that contains carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, potassium and phosphorus, since these fundamental elements are the building block of life. Everything on earth, every living thing possesses that element. So apply amendment of fertilizer materials that contains that element, apart from the normal NPK fertilizer and micronutrients we know. What else can we do? Ethical mineral mining and oil exploration. Use soil in accordance with uses and policies. There are policies for soil using. I think in this we are almost done with that, or we have go ahead of that. So environmental conservation and adaptation to climate change. You need to conserve the environment. Don't go and bring down 30 acres, 50 acres, 100 acres when you are not ready to plant them. So right use of chemicals, including agrochemicals, chemicals residue has an impact in soil microbial life. Climatic modulation through greenhouse gas sequestration. Please permit me, let me talk about afforestation and reforestation program, the Kyoto Protocol of 2016. We can also implement that, and that will help us sequester our carbon. Conclusion: Nigerian soil health and biodiversity have been found to be threatened by contamination with chemicals and anthropogenic factors and climate change, with anticipated impact of these traits being worse and leading to about less than or greater than 20% to 50% loss in soil functionality, which may be societal unrest, malnutrition, death, including intensive environmental degradation. Outcome of the study concludes that Nigerian soil should be kept alive and healthy through activities like proper waste through pollutant management, adaptation to climate impact through climate sensitive agriculture, environmental conservation including application of organic and inorganic fertilizer for soil health and biodiversity regeneration. Nigerian soil should be used in accordance to soil policy and recommendations made by soil scientists among other soil usage stakeholders in order to avoid rise in the already degraded status of the Nigerian soil health and biodiversity. Thank you for listening.
He is a university teacher. He is a professor of biogeography and environmental science, and also a consultant. A biogeographer is also a soil scientist, but he studies the soil from the lens of a geographer. He has over 25 years teaching and research experience in biogeography, climate change, forest management, rangeland studies, drought and desertification, and environmental management. He is presently with the university, with the Nasarawa State University in Kefi. Before moving to Nasarawa State University, Professor Ayuba was at the University of Maiduguri for 20 years. Professor, the chairman, you will agree with me that the COP21 of all the negotiations, COP21 was the most successful, and that is what we're working with, the whole world is working with. Professor Haruna Ayuba was a member of the negotiating team representing Nigeria and Africa in COP20 and COP21. He has been working with the Federal Ministry of Environment in the development and delivery of key documents such as biennial updates reports. The UNFCCC requires that time to time countries will submit reports, certain reports, and Professor Ayuba is a consultant helping our government to work and then submit these documents. We've said he has also been working on the report on national communications, report on climate change policy of our dear country, Nigeria's nationally determined contribution, that is in terms of climate change mitigation, promoting climate finance to support agriculture in Nigeria. He's also working as a consultant on ecosystem-based adaptation.
Please, Vice Chair of Council, distinguished council members of NIS, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. It's not easy to be the last speaker, especially when people are tired. I hope I can get your attention for a few minutes as I run through my paper. I was particularly thrilled when the Vice Chair gave a definition of soil as the originator of life, the initiator of life. And if you look at Genesis 1, we're told God created us from the dust, isn't it? So if you are as dark as I am, you should thank God because God used the best of soils to create. If you are light, you are probably deficient in some nutrients. Amen. All right, so I've done the protocol. It's a humbling experience for me to stand before this wonderful audience this afternoon. And I thank the Dean of Faculty of Agric who initiated the entire process. So I'm looking at assessing the factors contributing to soil biodiversity, a theoretical approach for keeping our soils healthy and alive, and I have the outline there. So I know some people are scared of earthworms and all those, so viewers' discretion is advised because this is quite graphic. We'll go, the two speakers have made my job easy, so I'm not going to waste our time on the things they have already discussed. We all know what soil is. Our keynote speaker spoke extensively about soil functions, and the second speaker spoke about healthy soil, what makes the soil healthy. Biodiversity, you know, each time we talk about biodiversity, we're thinking of those big animals, those big plants, but quite often we neglect the essential element, which is the soil biodiversity. We also concentrate on the above ground biomass, but soil biodiversity has been described as the factor of life. It's the hidden world beneath us, and it drives everything that we see above. So, being the factor of life, the keynote speaker has mentioned the various characterizations, and you can see them from variety of life to soil aggregates, and quite complex indeed. In terms of the composition, we also heard from the two speakers the various composition. These are just graphic or pictorial representation of what they have given. First, you have the microbes, and then in terms of composition, we're told just 1 gram contains over 1 million microbes. And then you have the mesofauna, you have the macrofauna, quite diverse communities. That is just what they have already given you, so I'm just running through the slides. The keynote speaker also gave us this, the chemical engineers, the biological regulators, and the ecosystem engineers, playing a wonderful role in the world beneath. Just 1 foot, depending on how fat your foot is. If you place 1 foot on a healthy soil, you are actually standing on over 1 trillion bacteria, 1 billion fungi, about 10 million algae, and as many as 50 earthworms. And they are all linked together in a very complex interaction. In terms of the knowledge, the keynote speakers and the other speakers, they've mentioned that the only 1% of soil microorganisms have been identified. And that means we have a huge task to identify those 99%. And in many cases, we have very limited knowledge, very limited understanding of how this functions, limited and very poor understanding of the contribution of soil biodiversity. And especially those in arid environments, we don't seem to understand how they function. Very limited understanding on the vulnerability of soil biodiversity to what we do to it. Limited studies exist, and there's also inadequate knowledge and understanding regarding the appropriate methods to understand this. How to even standardize our tools and methodology is still a problem. In terms of the functions, I won't waste your time because the two speakers have discussed that. These soil microorganisms, because they say out of sight is out of mind. And because we don't see them, and they have some otherworldly, spiritual appearance, they're crawling and squirming, nature, render them very unattractive, and we don't like to see them. But what they lack in size and beauty, they make up for what? Numbers and worth. And two speakers have mentioned that. So they play a very essential role for agriculture, I won't bug you with this because the two speakers have mentioned that. And then, of course, they have very important role to agriculture. Our keynote speaker said we should feed the soil to feed the plants to feed us. So it's important we understand the chain. In terms of importance, we can't do without soil biodiversity. They help tremendously in terms of human health. She talked about not just food nutrition, but not just food security, but nutrition security. And they are very essential. The soil web, food web, cannot be complete without these men of the underworld. Permit me to use that. Importance to agriculture, very wonderful. The two experts have mentioned that. There's a study that was conducted that quantified the whole economic benefits of soil biodiversity. And every year, in terms of waste recycling, what they are doing is about $760 billion in terms of economic benefits and all the other functions that they play. So the key aspects of my paper are the factors. What are the factors? There are two critical factors, the biotic factors and the abiotic factors. And under the biotic factors, we talk about the presence or absence of vegetation, the role of man interactions across and between organisms. The abiotic factors, that is the non-living component. You talk about climate, especially temperature and soil moisture. You also have the adaptive factors, and they are all listed there. But it's important to note that while these can contribute to enhancing soil biodiversity, if you flip the other side of the coin, they could also serve as negative factors. Soil texture, whether it's gravel or sandy or silty or clay, will play a very important role because it can control also protection and availability of organic matter. And then they also very strongly affect the total biomass of soil earthworms. In terms of salinity, like I said, depending on the side of the coin you are looking at, it could be negative, it could also be positive, but there are certain microbes that will thrive well in high salinity. There are those who will not thrive well. Soil pH, the second speaker dwelled extensively on that, but it affects the metabolic action in the soil organisms. Parent material, depending on your parents, if your parents are dark, they can't give birth to light children, and if they are light, they are not likely to give birth to dark children. So parent material is very key in determining the bacterial community structure. So if you pick an arable soil or granitic outcrop, of course the soil microorganisms will not be able to thrive very well when you compare that with basalts that came as a result of volcanic action. Biotic factors, there are quite a number of them. You can look at the positive ones or the negative ones. Interactions that are huge, massive interactions going on in the soil. And some of them are positive, some of them are negative. So is it a symbiotic relationship? Is it a parasitic one? Commensal? Some just depend on others and there is nothing, they are not feeling the impact at all. So all of this will determine the quantum of microorganisms you can find in a place. Presence of above ground biodiversity will also affect what is happening below. So in other words, if you feed the soil, you will feed the plants and the plants will feed you. The role of man, yes, this is what we really need to do. Our keynote speaker said we need to feed the soil, to feed the plants, to feed us. So you can put it as a loop to remember if you won't take anything out of this place. I think that is the key message. Feed the soil to feed the plants and to feed us. There are threats, there are drivers of soil biodiversity loss, and we've had extensive lecture by Monday. So there are quite a number of them. The Food and Agriculture Organization gave us some 5 factors there. Climate change is a key factor because of all the things that are happening, temperature rising, flooding, and all the things happening. Land use change, we send heavy machineries to our soil and excavate. We have burrow pits, mining pits all over the place, all over the country, and nobody is talking about land reclamation. Things that these people can't do in their country, they just come and do it and get away with it. Invasive species, depending on the abundance, how they are proportionate, they will also affect life beneath. Unsustainable soil management practices, all right? We just encourage our farmers. Now this local government has 5 tractors. If you need, just come. And they come with the tractors and just go hit our soil and they just excavate and do whatever they want to do. And we import all sorts of things, pesticides, chemicals. We don't even, extension workers are not there to even guide the farmers. So what they do, they just put NPK without any soil testing. So they just pour the thing there. And because they don't have the resources, they don't even put enough. So with climate change, rather than those fertilizer pellets melting, they actually kill the crops. FAO says that we should do some of these things, value nature and food. These are proposals for what NIS can do. So with those few thoughts of mine, let me welcome you to World Soil Day 2020. Thank you.
Please can we
Engineer, ladies and gentlemen, the structure that NIS has put in place, which was within one of our mandates, is information sharing to land managers and land users. And this is on true trainings. We have conducted, we're just 2 years old, active. But then within this short period, we have organized trainings for bank groups, their executives, and those trainings were train the trainers. They go back and train other trainers, including extension agents. But we know the problem that extension agents have in 1 to 6 feet. That's a skill. We have soil fertility maps that originated between National Program for Food Security and NIS. These maps are approximate maps, yes. In terms of prediction, if you do ground truthing, 50%, you will say 50% is a pass mark. But why don't you make 70? Why don't you make 80? NISA, please approach us. Let's, because of the interest people have in soil, I think we can work together. We'll do a proposal, we'll submit to our need. I know he can find some support from us. Manage our soils. If you don't understand yourself, how do you manage your soils? Has been made here. So let's take that seriously. The soil scientists are poor. And people said, I don't want to mess up my hand. When you touch soil, your hand, you have to go and wash over again. So why should I? And nobody's going to patronize you. So we're talking to them. And also, the National Assembly was happy. And the chairman of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, distinguished Senator Adamu Awulayi, suggested a scholarship thing. Ayuba, somebody is saying it at a very high level. So I asked him, sir, how do we do it? He said, talk to the Minister of Education. Talk to the Vice Chancellors. You're talking about agriculture being the, what is it? the mainstay, the answer to everything. Agriculture starts from the soil. If you don't have people to teach farmers on how to maintain it, and it's only when you are well informed that you can teach farmers. Let me tell you, it's going to be a mirage. All this talking about food security, producing so much to the extent that you were exporting, where you are neglected. Sorry. All right.
To mobilize rural dwellers on the need to keep the soil alive.
Oh yes, Dan. Yes, we have a lot of technology. You have a lot of strategies. Yes, we're willing. We're willing. Our partner in the Ministry of Agriculture is the Department of Agriculture and Lands, right? In the states, it's with the ADPs. Even in the ministry, the economics,
under 2 years. He was my boss when we were in NPFS, and we all saw him as a goal-getter, and also a man who interacts both at very high level and at low level. And all the staff at NPFS, when I was there as a seed consultant, loved Professor Chude. So I'm not surprised that within 2 years, he has made so much progress in pushing the institute to this level. We continue to pray for him because of the importance of soil in agriculture. My first degree at UNN was on plant soil science, though the second one was on seed science. But I want to observe that since the ADPs interface with our farmers, we know that the ADPs have problems. I was expecting some either the managers of some of the ADPs or directors of extension to be in this forum, since they interface with our farmers. Well, he said they have been organizing train-to-train.
So possible for us to have an interface with the media, maybe print media or social media. Let's have the list of all the directory of all the soil scientists that across the entire country. If we can publish them on the social, in the print media, just as maybe one page or something, let people know where these soil scientists are and where they can access help.